All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Backer from Off the Wall Novels, and I am joined by Noah Clemens in a crossover episode with his channel, Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. And we are going to discuss meditation. How you doing, Noah?
Good, Daniel. How are you today?
I am excellent and much better now that I'm talking to you about this because I am very excited for everything that we're about to discuss. I know it's going to be a good one.
Very cool. I'm always excited to talk about aspects of meditation because I love Buddhism. On my channel, there's a playlist of exploration of Buddhism from a Western perspective, and I just have been, into it for the greater, the lion's share of my life. So, what I'm going to talk about meditation is from personal experience, but definitely comes from a Buddhist background, understanding of meditation practice, not just a wider Eastern, because meditation is a practice that is worldwide, but more focused in Eastern, Eastern countries, but all different belief systems. So my experience is, more or less strictly Buddhist.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna basically do the same, try to keep it pretty experiential based and try to get into like what it feels like to meditate because sometimes I think people can get lost in um how not to meditate and I think it can be more relatable if we talk about the internal feeling and that sort of thing and then also maybe how it relates to some more secular understandings of like cognitive behavioral therapy or postmodern philosophy. But first, I just want you to come clean here on this conversation. Are you a bodhisattva in a second reincarnation? You can be honest with us here.
You know, um, I would like to think that at this point, um, and it takes a very it takes a lot of understanding of what Buddhism and what this term bodhisattva means. But I would like to think that anybody who has a proclivity to uh, Buddhist ideals and living in a way of virtue, focusing on virtue, which is the bodhisattva path, is just the path of practicing virtue, most notably the perfections, which are the inexhaustible virtues: generosity, kindness, patience, meditation, concentration, and effort, energy itself. That those people are bodhisattvas, whether they realize it or not, and that they are, in a myriad small, insignificant, unsexy ways, making the world a better place and helping out our fellow beings.
All right. I'm gonna take that as a yes. But all joking aside, I really do like that answer. Is that and I think that that is something that is kind of at the core of the Buddhist perspective is that it's like it might be true whether they know it or not. Because from my understanding and experience with meditation, it has a lot to do with kind of decentering what you think you know and stepping into a more unknown territory. So maybe we could start the discussion off with a little bit about just like the subjectivity of meditation. If there are any topics that come to mind within that, I could pass it to you, or I could take the lead on that as well.
I think that subjectivity is a perfect place to start because you have to understand, we are in a Western culture, in the American culture, just totally, um, you know flooded by the idea that objectivity is where the truth is, and subjectivity is this kind of gray area where people can have their personal truths, but there's no ideal there. There's no ideal truth, and that is the furthest thing from the truth when you talk about personal growth. That your truth it might not be a foundational truth, something that is unchanging, but you have to start where you're at, and you can't be afraid of allowing the subjectivity of experience to be the essence of what you're working with. And with that, I'll just let you take it. And yeah, I think it's worth it to just drive this kind of thing home first, because that's where a lot of that kind of idea of what you said, you people get bogged down with whether they're doing it right, comes from that there's some objective right way that you should be doing it, and you have to, you know, figure out what that is or something, when you know, one step at a time, right? You know, take the first step, and that might just be taking some deep breaths and closing your eyes for 10 minutes.
Definitely, yeah. And that sends my mind so many different places. But like the first one is that something that is just endlessly fascinating to me is that so much of meditation in like American culture has been kind of co-opted by like entrepreneurs and people who are almost using it in order to like hack their progress in their business and in their personal life. And
Right,
I don't think that's necessarily wrong. Like I think that
right,
focus and a clear mind and all of that sort of thing can be very helpful and lucrative even. um I just think that there is something inherently funny about that contrast though, given um what it seems like would be the purest expression of it, which would be kind of like becoming more um or becoming less attached to those material measures of success and that sort of thing. But in terms of the subjective experience of it, I like all of that, and just specifically the idea that yeah, there is like the idea that something is subjective can be a conversation ender. That it's like if two people come up with two different interpretations of something, then we're like, oh, well, it's subjective. Let's leave it at that. But it seems to be a lot more central to the actual like Buddhist epistemology that in I would love to hear what you think of this because I still struggle with how I try to understand this. Is that in some of these books and in some of the way that these thinkers talk about it, it seems like they're saying that your perception is actually like animating the universe around you. And I don't know what to make of this because I think from an experiential perspective that's true, but then I don't know how seriously I'm supposed to take that. What do you think about that? Does that test your sensibilities at all? Are you all in on that?
I'm all in on that. And now, and it comes down to that there's a couple of different types. There's two different types of truth, capital T truth. There's a relative truth that is, and then there's an absolute truth, right? And it's really hard to come at this kind of thing. It gets complex very, very quick. So I will say that in the subject and subjective nature of what embarking on a meditative practice is, one of the first things that you need is courage. You have to have courage within yourself um to just do it, to just go for it and embrace and accept what it is as exactly what it needs to be, without judgment, without chastising yourself, and that kind of thing. As far as the inner outer dualistic thinking, as far as, you know, well, there's this world out there that doesn't disappear when I close my eyes, right? So it's independent of me. That kind of thing becomes very the line between the inner and outer becomes very blurred very, very quickly. And the idea is that there is, without any experiencer, there would be nothing to experience. So it's not just, you can't just, you know, it's not just you know what I mean? It's not just you, it's humanity as a whole, and even all sentient beings, not just human beings that are animating this universe. But also, you know, to talk about it like that, you know, I mean, like we get far out there pretty quick, and I just want to keep it as practical as we can
Sure.
with this talk. But just to say that the universe, our galaxy and our Earth and these kind of things, we are a product of this thing. To look at it, in Western way of thinking, there's this kind of idea that the earth and nature and the universe would be better off without us, or something like that, that we are, a pariah or some kind of cancer on the earth because we destroy the earth with technology or whatever, what have you, some kind of things like this, some kind of ideas. But all that is false. Okay, I mean, when it comes down to it, if the earth went through some upheaval, whether man-made or not, the earth, this planet that we're on, would immediately start reconditioning itself for life and for conscious life, for the kind of beings that we are. It is for us just as much as we are experiencing it. It is here for us. It is the sun is here for us just as much as it is a plant. We are. It's a symbiotic relationship is not exactly right, but we are. It's mutual.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I've never heard that expressed exactly like that before, because I think especially in terms of like climate, a lot of people do frame things in terms of like we're this parasite that is somehow either like an alien that doesn't belong here, or is just this like this thing that's ruining everything. And so I've never heard anybody mention that it's like, even if we did screw this place up, then the earth would like get ready to go and do it again. So
right. Well, it's like, does a beaver or some kind of animals that build something that changes the nature in some kind of way, are they destroying something that nature's trying to do? No, they're part of nature. They're doing something. So like, why is it that what we do is an affront to nature? It's not. I'm not a big technological proponent, thinking that I mean, the amount of the amount of lines up in the air going across my city is absurd. You know what I mean? Things like that. But it's not, we're not, we are a part of nature, and everything that we do is part of what what nature does. We are everything is within the realm of what we should do, what we can do, and what we should do. That kind of thing. I see it like that.
That's interesting, and I definitely, I don't want to get too bogged down in any like political aspect of it, because I think it's interesting you bring up the beaver too, because I think that's like Richard Dawkins's example of what he calls an extended phenotype, which I think if we look at that as a metaphor for what humanity is doing, that'd be correct, because Dawkins would object to the fact that a lot of human behaviors are somehow genetically encoded in that same way. But if I understand correctly, for the beaver, that's like in their DNA to go and build those dams. And so
Right.
from that fundamental perspective, I like that humans as builders, humans as like stewards of the earth is somehow fundamental to our nature. Now, the main question is, how do we steer this conversation back to meditation? Because in terms of, I love the groundwork. I love the subjectivity of all of this. So like, I think I would almost want to do another episode just on like the cosmology and the
Sure. It's a fascinating thing, but I can tell you how I kind of can see, because it has to be very subjective and personal. Mm-hmm. So how we look at the outer as unbelievably complex or crazy and not understandable that it is that the reality is a mirror. The outer and the inner are two sides of a coin. Your inner self that's what meditation, kind of strengthens your inner self, and then your outer perceptions. They're a mirror of each other. So there's nothing that humanity is doing that doesn't have some kind of analog inside, as within, so without, that kind of thing, right? So in meditation, you do this kind of thing where you are always becoming mindful of the boundary, a boundary of some kind. And a lot of times that boundary is the boundary between inner and outer. Take breath meditation, for example. If you're just sitting and focusing on your breath, then you're going to become keenly aware at some point, maybe after a month, maybe after 6 months, maybe a year. Who knows how long it'll take for each individual person? It's subjective. But you will become keenly aware of the boundary, that air that is coming into your being, where it stops being air and starts being breath, and stops being breath and is returned again to the air. And is there any difference between that what that is when it is outside of your body or inside of your body? No. You know what I mean? It is there, but you, and there's this process and this relationship going on. And that's why I say all the boundaries become fuzzy, if not arbitrary. And then you grow through these kind of things. And what's the way that you want to grow is being more aware that distinctions are not set in stone, and not something that you make your judgments and run your belief set on.
Okay, I like that a lot, and especially that idea, which I feel like has been coming up a lot for me recently in these things that I've read about it, of zeroing in on the like space between two different things. And so within like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, for example, they're all about trying to, zero in on the space between being asleep and being awake, the space between being dead and between being alive. And
The
I think
Barda.
what's that? The
The
Barda.
Barda.
That's right. Yeah. So it seems like this is what sort of brings that breakdown of objectivity, because it seems like objectivity is much more about the notion of a thing, like without the other like blurry edges around it. It's like the notion that, and specifically for Buddhism, it would be like the idea of a self. But whereas you're saying with this breathing technique can show you experientially that everything that we take to be a singular thing is actually like a between, like a fluid transition between two or probably like infinite processes.
Right.
So
That is very complex causes and conditions, that nothing is independent. That's the main thing, that nothing is independent and of itself what it is independently.
so it seems that like one of the things that I'm getting a renewed interest in right now is that a lot of the things that can cause you suffering in the Buddhist framework are the illusions that make you think that you are independent from everything else. And so it just for like a personal anecdote of my own, that I had heard this stuff before about like, oh, the unconscious mind, the idea of having like, Freudian trauma and things like that. But something that really struck me was when and this came from a cognitive behavioral therapy approach, but it led me more into meditation, was that I was led through the process just through like a basic YouTube video of identifying a negative emotion and then following it to see what sort of belief was underlying this negative emotion. And again, I'd heard of the unconscious mind. I knew that on some level, things that I was not directly aware of could influence my experience. But it was another thing entirely, really in the moment, to realize that the unconscious belief that was guiding my behavior, I had no idea about it. And so, because so often when we hear the word belief, we think like an active thing that we would report to someone if they asked us about it. So what's your take on these ideas of these beliefs about ourselves that drive us and then cause us suffering?
Well, and see, that's the thing, is like all beliefs, that's things that are routinely, like through meditation and through Buddhist practice of all kinds, that beliefs are stripped away. You have this belief, and the main thing is that you're an independent being. I have this, I have that. I'm just this body. I'm just this, what's between the ears here, and that's me, and that's not anything else, and everything else is independent. I'm independent from everything else, and that kind of thing. You break that kind of thing down, and you make it very, very fuzzy, and the inner and the outer become enmeshed, and this kind of thing. But as much as you say, and I'm saying, and I'm saying it because it is in Buddhist literature, and the kind of thing that is pushed out there of breaking free of yourself and this kind of thing. But you can never do it. You can never ever really do it, because you are in your own body. So there's never a real idea of going into some kind of ethereal beingness and being in the world as everybody, meeting people, and oh, I'm you, and you're me, and interacting like that and stuff. So the teaching is to learn the arbitrariness of the line, that the belief itself is where the problem is, that these lines and these distinctions are are false, that they're a falsehood. And that doesn't mean that there's no differences. I mean, of course, I'm not my house and this wall here or something, and there are differences, but we rely on these things to be what we are. There's all this interdependence going on, and the more that you realize that and move towards that kind of thing, the more patience, understanding, kindness, and these kind of virtuous activities that you do, just as a matter of course. And this is the way to be a more integrated and fully aware, understanding human being. And that's what it's really about. It's about growth and development. That's what it's really about. It's not about realizing some great huge truth that then you can tell other people or something like this. It's about being a better, a more virtuous person, and in your being, making your life better and everybody else's life better that comes in contact with you. That's it.
Now, that is it. But I feel like I am guilty of this, and other people are guilty of this too, is that you hear some fantastical stories about the experiences that you can have on the way to that virtue, because you are developing like a keen awareness of your consciousness and the things that go on in your mind. And a lot of times, sure, you show up to sit down and watch your breath or watch your thoughts, but like you can get into some pretty psychedelic states. And I get that that's not the goal, but I'll admit, like when I first heard of this stuff, like that was definitely what drew me to it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
you come for the fireworks and then you stay for the virtue that comes with it. And maybe
Right.
it's because I'm still new to it, but I I have you had any experiences that you would care to share that might not be the most like virtuous goal of the meditative
Oh, sure.
experience, but
And I mean, yeah, it's just a thing of trying to keep it practical with like what the goal is. But the experience that you're going to have in meditation is all I mean, everybody's going to have all different kinds of experience. I've seen, colors. I've seen all kinds of visuals and things like this. I have had certain types of even uh, like like visions of personages in ways. And these kind of things are, I mean, I understood them to be archetypal, just being just kind of embodiments of what I perceived ideals to be, or something like that, or just power, different power, of the power to, um, you know, give all the time, something like that. And it's just these kind of things, when they come, they're cool and for themselves. And then what you take from them, that's the main thing. You know what I mean? That's the
Okay.
main thing of what they mean, is like, what do you take from them? You know, because there's a lot more to what we're capable of in our minds than, I mean, we could probably ever get to this day and age, because there's so much overstimulus. And what meditation is cutting off all the senses and stimulus. And even if we did it as much as we could possibly do, we can't get anywhere close to somebody who didn't have any lights, didn't have any electricity, lived in a
Sure.
a castle with nothing, and it was dark, and there was just flames, you know, for light, things like that. And so the kind of things that can be seen in the it gets to where you talk about imagination, you know, and then exploring what the imagination is, because the imagination is every bit of an essential part of you, at your subjectivity, yourself, as your thinking mind, as your subconscious mind, and all that. And nobody puts any weight in something that, as soon as you say the word imagination.
That's like
But
synonymous with fake. That's how most
right,
people use it. Yeah.
right. But
Yeah.
but also, what is booktube about?
Yeah. It's
You
fake.
know,
Or
it's like,
like fake has such a
it's
bad connotation.
stories. Yeah, but it's stories, and it's this, it's fiction. So what does fiction mean? You know what I mean? And it's that kind of thing. It's wild to
Yeah.
think about this, but the imagination is an amazing tool that, will, you're not directing it. That's the main thing, is that in meditation, you're not directing anything. You're not thinking anything specifically. Your mind is going to run all over the place or something. But if you can calm down and chill and let the imagination is going to bring stuff up anyways. You're going to tell yourself stories. You're going to see things, and your mind is bringing you raw material, to work with in that way.
I really like that you mentioned that. So I want to emphasize this for a second, because I think a lot of people get the impression that in order to do meditation correctly, there's nothing going on in your head. And so
Right.
this is like, I think probably the worst perspective you could go into it with, is because one, that's impossible.
Right.
And two, it's like that's the whole point, is to pay attention to that sort of stuff that's gonna happen. And so
Right.
like you said, it's much more about kind of relinquishing that attempt to have a specific experience so that you can get out of the way and actually like observe what's going on. And I've just noticed within myself, when I first started doing this, I thought I was paying attention to my mind. I was really just paying attention to the feeling of my head. And the thing is, that was actually still good. Like I
It
don't
is.
consider that bad at all. But it just isn't necessarily what I'm focused on doing right now. Which has much more to do with like the YouTube video that you sent me about the Korean Buddhist channel. And
Yeah.
I really liked the way that he phrased this sort of unconscious belief beneath everything, if I understand it correctly, is that he describes it as that it's a dramatic story that is underlying these emotions that you have. Because to me, when we say belief, this kind of connotes the like scientific idea of like belief in a scientifically verifiable phenomena or something.
Sure.
Whereas like when we say that there's a dramatic story that exists beneath this, this has much more to do with like, oh, there are all these like emotions and beliefs about an identity that's involved within the
Feelings.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's a wonderful, kind of topic, and I would just want to drive home definitely the idea that, like, you said uh good and bad on things that you're saying, and like that's a major point that we want to drive home, is that there is no bad um with
For sure.
meditation. When you're, even if you're just focusing on your body, or focusing on the feeling of your body or the feeling of your head, on these kind of things, there is a Buddhist sutra that is the Buddha talking about meditation on that. You know what I mean? That is very, everything is valid for meditation. Just even if you're, if you putting aside the stopping your thoughts and like clearing, just a clear mind, things like
Sure.
that. But like if you're going to focus on something, you can focus on anything, and you just bring that kind of thing to your mind. Are you going to be able to focus on it? No. Your mind is going to go all over the place and do whatever it does, and then you see what your mind is doing, and you gently bring it back to your object of meditation, and you keep going, and then it'll go all around, and then you gently bring it back again, all that kind of thing. But that process, that's what you need to observe and learn from. So the thing is like, well, clear your mind and stop the wandering thoughts. That might be, something that you hear is a goal of meditation. Can you ever do that? No. The idea is not to do it. The idea is to try to do it and see what happens. See what your mind is doing, so that you see what your mind is doing. So this brings up the kind of idea, and this is what Channel is driving home, that your mind, what your mind does. Okay, look at it like this. I like to look at it. I don't know if this is perfect, but I like to look at it like this. Take composting. If you take a bunch of organic material and you compost out in your yard and stuff, and that stuff breaks down and becomes this really fertilizer for your garden or whatever, right? Or you eat a bunch of fruits and veggies and things like this, right? And then you excrete this material. Um, the same thing is happening, but your body is doing it on a very much faster pace, right? Your mind on a normal day to day is like composting, and your mind on meditation is like the digestion. That your mind, the meditation, what you're doing is you're taking all the stuff, you're just stripping more and more of it away, and just trying to look at exactly what the mind is doing already, what it's doing already, but looking at it in a very conscious way, and therefore speeding up the process of what your mind is doing. And what is your mind trying to do? Really, it's trying to self realize and bring to your mind things that need to be understood, misunderstandings that you've had that need to be worked through, um, things that are in your personality construct or mental makeup that are causing harm to yourself. That's what your mind is doing. That's why you have these kind of stories that recur, and the same kinds of mentalities, thought loops that keep coming up, is because your mind is trying to get you to realize something. People go through their whole life not realizing what it is that their mind is trying to tell them, like that. But meditation is like a fast track for that, because your mind is going to do only what it does. You can't make it do anything different. So when you do this, when you kind of meditate, then it's like, you're high octane for your brain. And if you just remain conscious, trying to be as conscious and give it attention as much as possible, then you're going to grow from it. And it's no superhuman feat. It's something that, like, you get better at with time. It's a skill. It's not something that I couldn't tell you how to do it for yourself if I tried. You know what I mean? Because the inner workings are the substance. Your inner personality is the substance that you're working with, and our mind is the tool. And it's that kind of slave master relationship with your mind. A lot of people are totally ran by their mind, and they're already these personality constructs that are so big and built up, and mental constructs that are train tracks in their mind. But they're you have more power than you kind of realize, and meditation gives that power back to you consciously, makes unconscious processes conscious, is what, and just to put it broadly.
There's so much of that I want to talk about, but yeah, I just love all that. But like, I think that the most powerful thing, and also surprisingly the most practical of all of that, is that you can reframe your perspective and to see that your mind is working for you. Whereas it seems that when you kind of get into a bad thought pattern, or feeling down on yourself, or kind of spiraling, it's this antagonistic relationship with your mind, where you have negative thoughts or negative emotions, and then you start to judge them and either conclude things about your identity and about yourself that are essential or fundamental, or you just don't know how to stop them, and you assume that it's bad that you're having all of these thoughts in there. And so it is so powerful to realize that these are signals. But then this is also, I think, it kind of ties into your idea about how people are like naturally occurring on Earth and are not this external, like antagonistic force against it. Is that like people have that antagonistic relationship with their thoughts, when it should be more that it's like, no, this is all building to a process. And this echoes some of these ideas that are occurring within cognitive behavioral therapy too, that the traditional Western perspective tells us that this is chemical, and that there's something material in your body that's going on. But then cognitive behavioral therapy is more of like, no, this is your body trying to signal something that you need to change or that you need to do. And so the more attention that you pay to it, the better you can address that. And so it's just such a fascinating and revolutionary way to think about mental illness too, because something like anxiety or depression is not necessarily in your wiring. I know some people probably are born with a certain predisposition for those sort of things. So I acknowledge that like clinical depression
There,
exists,
and
but
there are chemical imbalances. There are things like
for
that.
sure,
There, we're not saying. I would never say that. It's all one thing or
100%.
another. For sure. But I think that it is the lion's share of, that people, this is, they don't have a way to really handle something that they need to face, and in that kind of way, that is what meditation is about, because that is what our mind is already about. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Yeah.
about that stuff.
Well, I mean, that's just such a game changer, because it's like that's taking you from being like I'm a piece of shit because I have negative thoughts to my negative thoughts are proof that I am working correctly.
Yeah, but then also it's like, okay, well, this is where the courage, another aspect of the courage comes in, because you have to be able to look at these stories and really say, okay, well, who does that, who, you know, who in my life does that remind me of? What situation was I in that I, kind of, that is a story that keeps recurring. And if you were a victim, rightfully so, at some point in your life, it's going to be hard to take a look at that and accept it. One, because why these things happen is because acceptance is not there. To see where a misunderstanding on your part has been had, and then give that up. To clear away judgments, and then ultimately the word the word for it that is very, very hard for people to take, that have valid reasons for their pain, and is forgiveness. You have to be able to forgive others. You have to be able to forgive people. And this is what makes this kind of inner looking meditation so tough, is because all the pain and all the suffering is there. It's in there. And you have to be able to, you know, accept it, forgive others, move through it, consciously, fully consciously. And it's tough. But if you don't do it, your mind is going to keep on trying to get you to do it. And that's where these kind of neuroses and things where, just all kinds of mental disorders come from, whether it be something on a more widespread or popular side, like anxiety or depression. Sad to say that kind of thing is widespread and or popular, but it is, especially in our culture. Or something more hardcore and more rarefied, something like a split personality disorder, something like where you have a manic depressive personality times 100, where you just certain types of people you might might be triggered by, or something like this. When it's all about acceptance. Acceptance is a really big word for what meditation, a goal of meditation, is.
All right. So I have a big question then, because this is something that I thought a lot about recently, that a lot of meditation seems to be about sitting down and observing your mind and your thoughts and negative beliefs that underlie the thoughts and the feelings and things like that. So, is there an analogous process for observing drives and desires? Because I understand like the four noble truths that like suffering is caused by desire and that sort of thing, but I feel I have a more intuitive grasp on reframing negative beliefs. But when it comes to like, is there a reframing process for desires and for, because that doesn't seem to be belief based, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's this kind of thing where everything that you're saying can be chalked up to like observing the personality, like your whole personality,
Okay.
And that's the thing, is like you can try to you know have this reductionist kind of look at it, but everything is independent, or nothing is independent. It's all one organism. So your thoughts and your feelings and your personality, and it's all your personality. This is what it all kind of comes down to.
Hmm.
And the main thing is to make that kind of thing not fractured, to make it whole, to where you see yourself as a more, you understand your everything as a more whole kind of being. But see, the approach to desire is another one of those things that I kind of talked about earlier. Okay, so like you want to have no desire, right? Because desire is the root of suffering. Not no desire, but I'm saying like as a goal, you know, desiring things, wanting what you don't have, that's a root of suffering.
Sure.
Not wanting things that are in your experience right now, that's a root of suffering. So, you know, just the desire, the things that are in yourself, if you could just, you know, just accept, be more accepting, then you would be less suffering or something like that, right? But you can't do that. You can't not desire, because even the desire not to desire is what you're gonna get to. Even like, I mean, there's Buddhist sutras on that, on desiring not to desire, and what that kind of thing is. And so this is a kind of thing that is, again, it is part of what makes us human that we have to understand. It's not about breaking free. It's not about doing a certain thing with it. It's about having understanding of it. And how we understand it is by saying no to it and seeing what it does. You know what I mean? You don't understand something better by indulging it all the time. You have to, you know, if say there's an addiction, you know, the best way to break free of an addiction, any addiction, and it's across the board, no matter what it is that you have a compulsion to do, is when you feel it, sit there, quiet, sit still, and just say, I'm not going to do that. And just sit there, breathe, and see what your body does, see what your mind does, and see what happens with that. And watch that desire go through your body. Watch that desire work itself through your mind and in your personality. That is the best way to gain control over that desire. Doesn't mean you're not going to do it. Doesn't mean you're not going to, you know, I mean, the main thing is to understand what it is that you're doing more. And so, you know, the whole kind of desire or desire as something that is the root of suffering and something that needs to be overcome. That's another of these kind of slave or master relationship.
Okay.
Is your desire your master? Is when you want something, a certain thing, do you drop whatever it is that else that's going on and just do that? Then that desire is your master. But or can you want something and then give into it in a fully conscious way, knowing exactly what you're doing, and there's no problem with that? Something like that, you know what I mean? That it's who's in control here. And it's not who's in control, but like it is that a slave or a master? It's that kind of relationship. I don't know a better way to put it, but there's probably a better.
That's great. Yeah. Well, because it's like, because I understand that in terms of desiring like an actual thing, because then there is this kind of like subject object relationship with it. But then
Right.
I'm also curious just about like the literal internal feelings of desire in themselves, just as like the sort of like aimless desire, just the like the sort like wanting something that you don't know you want, those kind of like really abstract conscious, because it's like when you're hungry, you're hungry for food, you know. But it's like if
Right.
you feel an internal lack and you don't really know what would fill it, is there any sort of like save me, Noah, what do I do?
Well, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful question. And it's just that kind of thing where, man, we all feel, I mean, I think that nobody is alone in the feeling of that there is unfulfilled potential, where there is something that you should be doing that you're not, something like that. And this kind of feeling of, and again, courage is a big deal, brother. Courage is living from your heart. Core comes from the Latin heart, and having courage is living from your heart, living not by this rational I can't do this, I can't afford it, I shouldn't do that, somebody would be disappointed in me or whatever, but living from it's so hard because what words do you use? But I would say living from a passionate place, from a place of going after what you want in your heart, which is desire, right? Like that's desire itself, right? So the distinctions, there's not a good way, you're never going to break free of desire. But how to work through that kind of thing, I would say, really, you meditation can do it. Meditation can bring you, I would say, in my experience, that it can give you an answer. You give yourself an answer, but it comes from this kind of an intuitive, almost imagination place, where it will just come up. You have to just give it space, give it silence, and you just within yourself, you smile and you say, what is it that I really want right now? Like, really, what do I want? And you sit there and you chill and you smile at yourself and you just be with you. And if it doesn't come up, you say thank you and you get done and you do it again.
I don't like that last part. I want instant gratification. What the
right.
heck? I gotta do this for the
This is and that's the thing. It's all a process. Meditation is a big process, and it drives home the idea that everything is process. There's not any, there's not any push a button and get insight.
No, I can relate to that though, because like just a specific experience that comes to mind is that I went to Yosemite with some friends maybe 8 months ago or so, and during the pandemic, I really got out of shape. And so they signed us up for like a 7 mile hike where like 5 of the miles were switchbacks. And I used to lead tours, and so I was like, oh, I'll be fine. I was like, talk about being attached to an identity that wasn't true. Um, I I literally was like so far behind everybody, and I felt a lot of anxiety about it. One, because I was like just in terrible physical pain, but then two, it's like everybody else was having fun and they kept waiting for me. I was like, oh God, I just felt terrible, and I kept falling, and like every time I fall, it just felt like a humiliating slap in the face.
Sure.
And so after being extremely discouraged about this for a long time, I started to kind of play this game in my head of being like, obviously what I'm doing right now isn't working. Like I am not having fun. I feel like I'm being a burden to them. And they were all like, it's okay, Danny. But I'm like, you're supposed to, you have to say that right now. What are you gonna
you're my friends. I get it. Thank you.
But within that, within kind of acknowledging that like whatever mental game I was playing wasn't working, there was this little thing that bubbled up, and it was just as simple as like, you should slow down but keep going. Because what I was doing is I was trying to keep their pace, getting exhausted, and then I'd get tired and I'd have to pause. So what I did instead was I moved at like a snail's pace, but I just did not stop. It was just like a tiny little step at a time. And that's what got me up that mountain, and I shit you not, Noah, the next day I was in so much pain, my testicles hurt. Like it felt like they were about to shrivel up and fall off and like,
I don't mean to laugh.
oh no, dude, I'm laughing about it now, but at the time
Yeah.
it was like, I think it was beyond sore. My body was telling me like, you better not do that again anytime soon.
Yeah.
Like that,
I
do not.
gave you one. I gave you one.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um,
Oh,
but it is fascinating because like I didn't feel like I came up with that solution. It just felt like I sort of acknowledged that what I came up with wasn't working. So I kind of cleared some space, and then this other thing sort of came out. So have you ever had any experiences like that?
of course. And that's a big thing. That's a perfect place to kind of wrap this up, I think, or like wrap the meditation up into like what is it that meditation kind of does. And like one of the first things is make space. And it's making space within yourself. That's why at at the core of it, at the beginning and all through it, there's no bad way to do it. Because if you are being quiet, if you have your eyes closed, no external stimulus, and you're just breathing, then you're doing this. You're making space for yourself. And doing that is of immense benefit. Just that is of immense benefit because it translates that those times that you make space in meditation and you become more and more comfortable with this kind of waiting, with this kind of negative space where there's not any, maybe a vacuous kind of space, and you become more kind of comfortable with that, then in the moments when things are happening, you will have that in yourself. You can tap into that. Or like you said, in an experience when things are going down or whatever, and you're just like, oh, this isn't where I want to be. And you just kind of clear out something. That space is there. That kind of thing is a direct benefit of meditation for sure. It's making space, and it is being present, like in the now. Also, so many times people are just, they live in the past. That people that have negative thought loops and traumas, a lot of times that are doing a number on their personalities and on their mind states, and it's just really tough, bad situation kind of thing. They're living in the past. A lot of anxiety is anxiety about the future, things that haven't even happened, and this kind of thing. There's just living in the now and just being present where you're at. Meditation allows that kind of thing very much. Even, it's just a byproduct really, because when you are in meditation, no matter how you're doing it, no matter what you're focusing on or how well it's going, you're doing that. You're in the now. If you're in a, maybe you are in a story, and then you bring yourself back to the now gently with a smile, but you still, that's the practice. So you're making space, and you're getting more comfortable with being in the present all the time, and ultimately you're becoming more aware of everything, of the outer and the inner, and what what causes and conditions are at play in a situation that is going on. And that's just it. Meditation does these kind of things, and it does those kind of things no matter how quote unquote good of a meditator you are. It just does that. That's wonderful benefit, to have that kind of space, to be responsive, not reactive. There you go. I mean,
Yeah, that's I think that's one of the most direct and practical things, like beyond all the sort of like cosmic messages and trippy experiences you can have, is that even after like not doing it for super long, because I'm somebody that if I'm focusing on something and then somebody like walks across the floor upstairs, I'll feel like a little tense in my body. And then after meditating, the same thing will happen. And it is interesting because you just like watch it. And it's not from this like completely far off alien place of like Buddha enlightenment. You're just not reacting to it. You're watching it.
Right.
And then the other thing I wanted to point out too is just to sort of underscore that point of that it's all about awareness, because sometimes I'll say other people, but like I confuse awareness with like information. That that if I'm aware, that means I know a lot of things. But awareness is more of this like sort of passive experience that's like open and expansive. And so that is the current goal to cultivate that more. And so I guess if I could end with a brief question, is there a more specific goal that you have in your meditation practice right now for the time that you've been doing it?
Well, I'll answer your question, that's for sure. But I will say that like all the experience of like any kind of extra, extra sensory kind of experience you might have and things like this, they serve as well, to understand that you are significant. The materialist reality, the scientific materialism will tell you all day how insignificant you are and how insignificant this planet is, which is just, there's nothing more unscientific than that, to tell you the truth. Because where is it observed that, we're not, what this universe is doing? There's no other intelligent beings, conscious beings that we know of, that with all of our looking and all of our everything, what is the point? I mean, to all observation, we are very we have a lot of purpose. We might not know what that is, but there is a purpose to us being here. And that there is just something more than that. It shows and drives home in a subjective, personal way that there's more to being a human being than just a meat suit floating on a rock around a ball of fire, around a bigger ball of fire, around a black hole. You know what I mean? It's not that. That's not all that is going on here.
Well, there's fame, status, and money. The other thing.
Right. I think most people watching this will say no, but there's stories, right?
Oh, of course.
There's wonderful stories, and and art. I mean, like, what a beautiful thing. But isn't nature and this universe, galaxy, and solar system and Earth itself also some beautiful form of art in some kind of way? Awe-inspiring is what it is. And there's just amazing stuff there. But I will say that a goal, okay, so to your question, like, is there a goal for me in my practice? Yeah, I mean, there's always goals, but the practice is practicing the perfections and becoming more able to do that. Is just requires all the things that meditation just does and deepens over time. It is knowing that my life is not mine, just for me, and being a dad and being a family man, but also how I am with just people that I meet and stuff like that, drives that kind of thing home more. That I'm not here. I don't work just for me. I don't do what I do just for me. It is for others just as well, and that kind of thing. And so dissolving even more that sense of self, that kind of thing is always a goal, not being so self-referential. And even though I've you know had a modicum of, I think, quote unquote success in that way, where I do feel like I can be looking at, I be more empathetic, see, and see from, not my life and things, not from a just a self-referential point of view. It's never there, there's always more. The self-talk of you didn't do good enough, you could do better, there's things you should be doing that you're not doing, you have potential that is unrealized. That kind of stuff never stops. It becomes more and more understood, but that kind of thing, understanding that more is probably, that right there more is probably my top goal. Just understanding that, just the knowledge that you everything you do, whatever you do, is good enough, if you try, and that kind of thing. So
Damn. Yeah, I mean that's a phenomenal answer, and I think a pretty good way to end too. I mean, unless you wanna add anything beyond that,
well,
that's
I mean,
the goal.
I thank you so much, Daniel, for having me on. I can talk about this stuff for hours and hours. It's amazing. But I will say that I would like to just throw in a little bit more, just to say that meditation is not the whole of the story. Like, meditation is not a miracle practice that will do it all for you or something. It takes doing, it takes activity. Okay, meditation is a personal inward tool, a science in and of itself, to grow your inner being and stuff. But it's not all of it. You have to do action, and with that, there has to be a willingness to learn. You have to be willing to open yourself up to whatever comes up like that. You have to be able to say and acknowledge, and maybe even verbally say to others, shortcomings, things that you want to change in order to change them. That's a kind of thing of confession, and you have to be willing to do stuff all the time. Effort and activity is one of the perfections. None of this works without action. You don't grow by sitting still. You can grow a lot by sitting still, but that's like, there's no fruit in that, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. That I won't speak at length about this, but I've found that just in starting to do this, it seems like the opportunities in order to act on the information is just infinitely abundant. That, like, as soon as you start to look for it,
Yeah.
and this is, like, I guess not exactly in that vein, but it just felt like a little wink from the universe that I definitely experience a lot of synchronicities, and I find the more benign they are, the more fun they are, because I'm not trying to apply any secondary interpretation to it. I just think it is what it is exactly. Like, I'm not extrapolating anything, but just the other day I was thinking about this kind of stuff, and the idea came to me that, like, I need to express more gratitude, and I was, like, folding a bag that I use for my lunches that I take to school, and it literally said "thank you" on the front of it. And, like,
Yes.
again, I'm not gonna, like,
Yeah.
anything I say beyond that would just ruin it. It just was
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah. I love it. I love that kind of stuff. And I think you're definitely onto something, brother, with that. Um, the, there's a lot to be said. We could do a whole talk on cosmology and the universe and the inner and outer in that kind of way for sure. But I do think that when you embrace growth, then the universe is right there to help you along. Because it, just like how we were talking about with your mind, this inner life is doing it anyways, and you're just kind of you're quickening it. The outer life is like that too. It's the same as within, so without. So if you are not going to help yourself consciously and work on that in an outer way, then the universe is going to give you hardships. You know what I mean? That are gonna make you, it's gonna kick you from behind. It's gonna push you from behind, and it's gonna be tough. If you're doing it yourself, then it's almost like holding your hand and pulling you along or something, something like that. And I mean, there's all this. You can get really quickly into these new agey hippy dippy ideas, but you test it in the fires of experience. I dare you.
That's a good point, because that makes me think that like the instruction and the narrative behind it is secondary to the actual thing that you're supposed to do. Because if you do, I even found myself, as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, but the materialist would say this,
Right.
And
Right.
it's like I have to kind of remind myself that it's like the narrative is just the step to get you to do the thing.
Right.
And you can
Right.
maybe not discard it, but it's like you don't want to get too lost in the words and the logic of it.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, we can finish it on this. I got it perfect. The Buddha said that the Dharma, all the teachings, all the instruction that he'd ever given is like a raft to cross over a river, right? To cross from one side to another. When you get to the other side, are you going to pick up that raft and carry it on with you? No. It's been used. It's a tool. It has served its purpose, and you leave it on the bank and you continue on, right? And so that's what this is. This is not for theoretical exploration and to, oh, well, that sounds right. Oh, that I don't believe that. I don't think this, or I think that, and none of that. You do it or you don't do it. Test it. You test it for yourself or you don't. And nobody is hurt by it if you do. And the only person that is hurt by it if you don't, maybe yourself and nobody else. I mean, it just doesn't matter. So, it's just all in love. That's for sure.
There's no better ending. I think that's.
Thank you very much, Daniel. You're the best, man.
Dude, Noah, you are the best. This was fantastic. Yeah, we'll have to do this again soon. Yeah, I mean, thanks for doing this, man. Like I feel like I got a lot out of this. It gave me a lot to think about. So,
anytime, brother.
All righty. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. This has been the crossover episode of Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse with Noah Clemens and Off the Wall Novels with Daniel Backer. You all have a good day. Goodbye.